Hey strangers, just a quick pop-in before we get started. This episode contains words from the native language of the Syilx people. I did my absolute best to source proper pronunciation and say the words correctly. However, I don't speak the language and it uses sounds not used in my native language, so please forgive any mispronunciations. I am doing the best I can. Is it possible, in this day and age, for something real to truly remain elusive? Could there really be creatures living among us of which there is no solid evidence? Are the beasts some claim are real, truly real, or are they just a manifestation of humanity's fears and flaws? Welcome to Strange and Unexplained with me, Daisy Egan. If you've listened to any episode of this podcast about anything having to do with bodies of water, you know they're not my jam. My fear of drowning is such that I have to blow out while I'm splashing water on my face. You will never see me in an ocean past where it's up to my chest, and generally I can tolerate a lake because I'm relatively sure there aren't any animals that will swallow me up like a Tic Tac. Until now. Damn it! Can't we have anything? I guess it's swimming pools only from here on out. So please, nobody call me with a legend of a haunted swimming pool or a mystery of the YMCA lap lane killer. Today, we dive into Canada's mysterious Okanagan Lake, home to one of North America's most elusive cryptids, Ogopogo. Nestled in the heart of British Columbia are 5 connected freshwater fjord lakes in the Okanagan Valley. Okanagan Lake is the biggest of the 5, winding like a serpentine ribbon through the province. It was carved out by glaciers during the last ice age around 10,000 to 12,000 years ago. The lake is 84 miles long, 79 miles across, and 762 feet deep in some places, though the average depth is about 250 feet. With those depths, the lake has only frozen over 8 winters in the last 110 years. First Nations tribes of the region have been intimately connected to these waters. Long before European settlers arrived, Syilx and Secwepemc people talked about the secrets hidden in the waters. They spoke of the water spirit, which they called Nahaha'ik, or Naitaka, which translates to something in the water, but which can be taken to mean sacred creature of the water, water god, or water demon. Nayataka, it was said, protected those who honored it with offerings, so the tribespeople gave it small animals as a sacrifice to allow them to safely cross the lake. According to a 2020 blog post on the Tourism Kelowna website, Indigenous people from the region had a healthy fear of the spirit of the lake, but never thought it to be malevolent. But what happened to those who did not honor the spirit of the lake? One story, passed on through the local bands, told of Chief Timbasket, a visiting chief from another region. The chief was arrogant and denied that the creature in the lake existed. He refused to provide the required sacrifice to Nayataka, and as he and his family entered the lake in their canoe, they were dragged to the bottom by the creature, which whipped up the surface of the water with its long tail, creating a whirlpool that sucked the chief and his family down. So, yeah, maybe just pay the toll, you know? Like, is that really the hill or lake you want to die on? How hard is it to just sacrifice a squirrel to the fickle lake god, dude? It's not like there's a squirrel shortage. Sorry, squirrels. As more European settlers came to the region, these kinds of stories flourished. In 1855, trapper John McDougall reported his own harrowing encounter when his horses were dragged under by an unforeseen force. Some say his tale was the first of many encounters with what is now called Ogopogo, which sounds less like a fearsome beast and more like an 80s synth-pop band. Strangers, I have to give a presentation to my town council in a couple weeks about the benefit of play streets. I don't know the first thing about giving a presentation like this. Fortunately, Grammarly can help me craft a great outline and pitch, as well as provide me with a source list so I can do research and flesh out the proposal. Grammarly can also help me craft a pamphlet or document to give to the town council members with all the pertinent information clearly and concisely listed to make it easier for them. Listen, everyone is busy these days. If I can get a little help on the front end to make a persuasive argument with the help of Grammarly, it is a huge help. I also used Grammarly to help with my initial email correspondences with the council. With Grammarly, you can change the tone of what you're writing to something that matches the occasion. Need something businesslike and persuasive? Grammarly's got your back. Need something a little more casual and fun? Grammarly can help with that too. Whatever kind of writing you do, Grammarly gives you personalized writing suggestions based on your audience, goals, and context. 96% of Grammarly users report Grammarly helps them craft more impactful writing. Go from editing drafts in hours to seconds, and with Grammarly Premium, you can get even more personalized laser-focus help. Get AI writing support that works where you work. Sign up and download for free at grammarly.com/podcast. That's grammarly.com/podcast. Easier said, done. It was local resident Susan Allison in the early 1870s who brought Ogopogo into the modern consciousness. Living near what is now Quails Gate Winery, she described a snake-like creature she witnessed in the lake's depths. Her account sparked curiosity and fear among white settlers, forever imprinting Ogopogo in local lore. The native legends of Nyataka told of a creature with a serpentine body and the head of a horse and antlers of a deer. Not wanting to end up like old Chief Timbasket, the tribe's folks would offer the beast salmon, tobacco, and sage as a thank you for the food and water it provided. It seems likely the white settlers saw the offerings in the water, and that sparked the idea that it was necessary to make an animal sacrifice to the demon of the lake. This began the move away from the notion of Nyataka as the protector of the lake and those who crossed it, toward the more fearsome legend of a dangerous leviathan dwelling in the lake's depths that we now call Ogopogo. Some current members of the tribes are quick to point out that the Ogopogo referred to in today's legend of the lake is very different from the creature of native lore. Pat Raphael of the West Bank First Nation, which is part of the Okanagan National Alliance, agrees that Nyataka is a sacred spirit that protects the valley and lives in the caves under Rattlesnake Island. He describes the demonization of the creature as coming from a miscommunication between the tribes and early European settlers. And you know me, stranger, I'm no religious history expert, but I would venture to posit that the Puritan monotheists that were the white colonizers were primed to mistrust any so-called gods of the polytheist cultures that inhabited this continent before we got here. For a people whose god warned them to worship no false idols, the idea of a benevolent god in a lake just didn't jibe. You know, one culture's god is another culture's demon, and all that. Or, as Imogene Broberg-Hull puts it in her article What Lurks Beneath the Legend of Ogopogo on swimdrinkfish.ca, quote, "To the Syilx people, there is a spiritual form of the water and a physical form of the water. The waters of the narrow, snake-like Okanagan Lake fjord have a spirit, as do the mountains, the sky, and so on. To ensure safe passage through the giant lake, it's common for Syilx people to make offerings to the spirit in the form of tobacco, sage, or small animals. This action was misinterpreted in the 19th century by pioneers who thought indigenous people were offering chunks of meat to a very literal beast. The result is that they habitually demonized Hijacked as a bloodthirsty serpent who required bribes for safety. But the relationship between the Syilx people and the spirit of the lake is far from antagonistic. The spirit that embodies the water protects the long valley from one end to the other." End quote. Though it turns out that some of the water god's origin stories don't show the serpent of Lake Okanagan as merely a benign protector. Some describe the thing more as a curse brought forth by a murderous demon. One origin story, as retold by S.E. Schlosser on worldfolklore.net, goes, quote, "His mind was full of dark thoughts, and the demons spoke to him. His wild eyes and words frightened his people, and he became an outcast, shunned by all. One day, in a fury of rage and pain, he attacked old Kanhi Khan, a local wise man. The demon-possessed man killed the venerable sage on the shores of a beautiful lake near his home, and then ran away, afraid of what the people would do to him when they found out. But the gods had seen the murder and were angry. They captured the demon-possessed man and transformed him into a terrible serpent as a punishment for the murder of the good Kanhi Khan. Then the serpent was cast into the lake, condemned forever to remain at the scene of his crime. The people living near the lake called the serpent Hijacked, or lake demon. They would offer sacrifices to it before traveling upon its waters, but the offerings did not always appease the monster. Many times a fierce storm would fall upon the lake, and Hijacked would rise from the roiling waters to claim a life. Once a man who was watering his horse at the lake saw the monster rise up from the depths and pull the poor animal under. And so the curse of Hijacked continued to plague the residents of the lake. Then the white man came, and they scorned the tale of the lake demon. They began taking timber from the land nearby and floating the logs down to Lake Okanagan. One evening, as a local man worked on a raft of newly sawn logs, he chanced to look up and saw a long serpent with a horse-shaped head and a green, undulating body. It raised its head out of the water and stared deeply into the man's eyes. The man started shaking from head to toe and scrambled backward toward shore. The demonic eyes of the giant creature gleamed with malevolence, and he scrambled up the bank and ran for his life. Not long after, a resident set off in a canoe with his horses roped behind, leading them across the lake. Suddenly, the horses began screaming and thrashing in the water, and then disappeared underneath the waves. The canoe tipped backwards, and the man desperately pulled his knife and cut the ropes, just in time to save himself from being dragged into the murky depths. The horses were never seen again." End quote. This seems to be the first encounter between Hijacked and the white man. And if you ask me, the white man gets off a little too easy, considering all the deforestation and destruction he got up to. Sightings of the monster grew over the years. According to Schlosser's piece, some witnessed it as a long tree trunk or a floating log, but they said it would move against the current. There were reports of swimmers vanishing, of boats being attacked, and sometimes, it was said, the monster would rise up from the waters and grab birds from mid-air. Schlosser also says that it was in 1942 that the monster was rechristened Ogopogo. But Chief Byron Lewis of the Okanagan Band of the Syilx Nation says the name was anglicized to Ogopogo in 1924. The new name came from the lyrics of a song that included the following. I'm looking for the Ogopogo, the funny little Ogopogo. Since Mother was near, Wiggy's father was a whale. I'm going to put a little bit of salt on his tail. I want to find the Ogopogo. How adorable. I get how we went from Hijacked to Nyataka, but can someone explain to me how we went from Nyataka to something that sounds like it was invented by a Muppet on a theme park ride? There are also reports of the name Ogopogo being used back in the 1910s, so it is possible the song got its name and lyrics from the creature instead of the other way around. It's hard to say at this point. From Nyataka to Ogopogo, or Ogie as the Kelowna locals call him, the descriptions of the creature that haunts the waters of Lake Okanagan to this day vary wildly. But according to Broberg Hall, the one thing everyone agrees on is that he is long and thin. Some accounts describe Ogie as a multi-humped serpentine creature with a body up to 49 feet long and thicker than a telephone pole. This immense snake is sometimes green or black and sports the head of a horse or a ram or a goat or something with antlers. Those in the know say Ogie moves by coiling his body and propelling forward using his tail. I guess we can also assume that Ogie's pronouns are he, him. Drawings of Ogie depict something like a dragon or sea creature you would see on an old treasure map. Here be dragons, arg. In 1890, a man named Captain Thomas Shorts, Captain Shorts really sounds like an animated kid's character, honestly, was out on his steam-powered boat, of which he was captain, and he reported seeing something 16 feet long with the head of a ram in the water. But it disappeared when he turned his steam-powered boat around to get a better look. I would imagine it takes a while to make a U-turn in a boat big enough to run on steam power. Very few aquatic creatures just chill in place, especially when there's a massive hunk of machinery maneuvering toward it. Anyway, Ogopogo is sometimes a sinuous serpent, other times a humped beast with a horse's head, ever shifting in its appearance. Like the Madonna of sea monsters. When Captain Short shared his experience of Ogie, no one believed him. That didn't stop folks from reporting 2 to 3 sightings a year after that. Ogopogoquest.com catalogs sightings by year and invites people to share their sightings to add to the record. Some sightings were high profile, like when Jeffrey Tozer, son-in-law of the former British Columbia Premier W.A.C. Bennett, says he saw something in the lake. I think that's what passes for high profile in old-timey Canada. Other sightings were widely corroborated, like when in 1926 a row of 30 cars along the beach reported seeing Ogopogo. A similar widespread sighting in 1947 is described on Ogopogoquest.com. Quote, "A number of boaters all saw the creature at the same time. One of the witnesses, a Mr. Cray, gave a detailed description. It had a long, sinuous body, 30 feet in length, consisting of about 5 undulations, apparently separated from each other by about a 2-foot space, in which that part of the undulations would have been underwater. There appeared to be a forked tail, of which only one half came above the water. From time to time, the whole thing submerged and came up again." End quote. The website lists upwards of 50 Ogopogo sightings over the last 100 years or so and reminds us that these are hardly all of the sightings that have been reported. But how can it be that this actual beast could be trolling the waters of a Canadian lake? How is it that Canada has their very own Loch Ness Monster? As a kid, I was fascinated by tales of Nessie. I wanted so badly to believe the aquatic Scottish cryptid was real. When I visited Loch Ness in my early 20s, I watched the water for any signs of her at all. I didn't see her. The only thing that happened there was that someone in my tour group broke his leg playing soccer on the shore of the loch and had to cancel his plans to run with the bulls in Pamplona the following month. Maybe it was Nessie's wrath? Or maybe it was just further evidence that sports are bad and dangerous and we should all just sit quietly as much as possible. Case in point, I am largely sedentary, and I've never broken my leg. Strangers, my favorite bread, pasta, and pastry delivery subscription is back. Wild Grain is the first ever bake-from-frozen subscription box for premium sourdough, pasta, and hand-cut artisanal pastries. Everything bakes from frozen in 25 minutes or less, so I can have a delicious homemade breakfast Sammy or croissant before getting my day started. The pastas cook in less than half the time that boxed pastas do. That's because they're fresh, not dried. Each box is fully customizable, so if you just want bread, you can do that. If you're having a big staff meeting and you want to impress everyone with fresh baked pastries, you can do that. If you're a pasta fiend like me, get all pasta. Plus, if you're vegan, Wild Grain has a brand new plant-based box. Even if you're not vegan, they have a brand new plant-based box. With school starting again, why not treat your kid to a lunch sandwich made with fresh, delicious sourdough from Wild Grain? Sure, it's not a pre-made processed food product that comes in a plastic tray and the kids at school might look at your kid funny, but I promise you, years later when they're in therapy, They'll realize how special it was that you made them something wholesome and nutritious, while the cool kids gobbled up bread made with high fructose corn syrup and other stuff Wild Grain never uses. For a limited time, you can get $30 off the first box, plus free croissants in every box when you go to wildgrain.com/strange to start your subscription. You heard me, free croissant in every box, and $30 off your first box when you go to wildgrain.com/strange. That's wildgrain.com/strange, or you can use promo code STRANGE at checkout. So, is it possible? Is there any science to substantiate the possibility that something like what Captain Short saw could exist? Is Ogie real? Actual documentation of the creature scarcely existed before the 1960s, when, in 1968, we got our first video recording of an Ogopogo sighting. Art Folden was driving along Highway 97 when he saw something rippling along the lake's surface. He pulled his car over and began to record what he saw. The result is a short video of what appears to be a large wave moving across the lake about 110 yards offshore. When the footage was analyzed, the conclusion was that Folden did see something that was solid, not water. Many years later, the same footage was analyzed again for a 2005 program on National Geographic, and it turns out the movement was closer to the shore than Art thought. They concluded that Art did see an animal, but whatever it was too small to be any kind of water monster. It was probably an average non-water god type creature like a beaver or something. Which begs the question, why can't a water god/demon be a short king? What's with the discrimination? Maybe what Folden saw was a baby Ogopogo, an Ogopogo pup. And also, let's not forget that one of the deadliest animals on Earth is a mosquito. You don't have to be big to be dangerous. Who's to say there isn't some kind of demonic beaver? Demonic Beaver, by the way, is the name of my new band. OgopogoQuest.com is maintained by Kelowna resident Bill Stychuk. Bill's first experience with Ogopogo happened in October of 1978, when, while crossing the bridge over Okanagan Lake, he saw what he insisted was a head with 3 black humps behind it about 50 meters away. The creature remained in view for a full minute or so before it disappeared into the depths of the lake, leaving Bill and about 20 other onlookers convinced that the legend of Ogie was true. Bill was so convinced that he decided to make it his entire personality, and he created the Legend Hunters, a group of true believers in the legend of Ogopogo, who became self-appointed historians, archivists, and detectives of all things Ogie-related. And listen, I'm not judging. Good for Bill. Find what you're passionate about and run with it. A few years after Stychuk claimed to have first spotted Ogie, the town organized a kind of hunting contest for which the prize was $1 million to anyone who came up with irrefutable proof of the creature. The contest caused quite a frenzy. So much so that a news crew from the States showed up with harpoons, and the Director of Wildlife drafted an order of protection as part of the Endangered Species Act that basically said, listen, there's some kind of vertebrae that's over 3 meters in length that isn't a sturgeon living in the lake that cannot be hunted. Anyway, the legend hunters have spent decades trying to prove scientifically that Ogopogo is real. For many years, Bill organized frequent expeditions on which he and other legend hunters would go looking for Ogopogo in an effort to document the creature's existence. The details and notes of these excursions can be found on the website. Though, after 2009, there is no record of continued expeditions. Then, in 2023, Bill was approached by another guy named Bill. Coincidence? I don't think so. Wait, yes I do. I do think so. It's just a coincidence. Anyway, Bill Gibbons was another Ogie enthusiast who wanted to go out looking for the cryptid. The entry on the website for their 2-day excursion with their small crew details another sighting. Quote, to Bill Stychuk's surprise, he saw a dark form moving swiftly under the boat towards deeper water. Andrew, who was at the bow of the boat, also caught a glimpse of the object as it passed by. They both agreed that it was black in color and upwards of a meter, 3 feet long, and approximately 15 centimeters, 6 inches, in width. They speculated that the depth of the water and the presence of nutrients supplied by the creek would make this spot an ideal nursery for an immature species to develop, if this was indeed a smaller version of Ogopogo. End quote. So, a baby Ogie? Ogie Jr.? Look, I'm no cryptozoologist, but it seems to me speculation as to the kinds of nutrients in the creek that would make an ideal nursery for baby lake monsters seems like kind of a leap. Like, even if there is a creature and we aren't just archiving snapshots of fancy logs, we don't even know what kind of creature we are dealing with here, Bob. The most we know is it likes to make waves and hides from the camera. How do you know what kind of nutrients it needs? Okay, we know what the Bills and legend hunters think about all of this, but what do actual credentialed scientists have to say about the scientific viability of Ogie? According to Ogopogo Quest, quote, scientists have put forth the theory that unlike the world-renowned Loch Ness Monster, nicknamed Nessie, the Lake Okanagan resident is probably a form of primitive whale, Basilosaurus setoides, which tallies almost exactly with the log-like descriptions by people who claim to have seen it, end quote. That's interesting at all, but I did not find anything telling me which scientists put forth said theory and where they put it forth to. Still, I'll bite. So maybe Ogie is a prehistoric whale from the Cenozoic era, Basilosaurus setoides. Fun fact, my researcher tells me that this also happens to be the state fossil of Alabama. No, it's not Tommy Tuberville. Common mistake. This theory is echoed on a Cryptid's fan wiki page, which claims one Carl Schuker, a British cryptozoologist, says Ogie, quote, may be a kind of primitive serpentine whale such as a Basilosaurus that lived 40 million years ago. However, because the physical evidence for the beast is limited to unclear photographs and film, it has also been suggested that the sightings are misidentifications of common animals such as otters and inanimate objects such as floating logs. It's also possible that it's a plesiosaur, mosasaur, or pliosaur. There is a myth that in the middle of the lake there is a cave, and that's where the Ogopogo lives. End quote. Right. Got it. Might be a long-extinct whale, might be a big old water dinosaur, might be an otter. Cool. An earth sciences professor from University of British Columbia, Robert Young, is less inclined toward the theories that Ogie is an ancient whale or a forgotten dinosaur still haunting these waters. His prevailing theory about the sightings of Ogopogo is that these disturbances in the water might be explained by temperature differences at different depths of the lake. These shifts in warmth can cause water to slide under a more buoyant layer of water, creating a kind of wave. This phenomenon is common in spring and fall when water temperatures begin to change. Professor Young, though, is circumspect. He understands that the existence of Ogopogo is an important part of Canadian and Syilx culture. He falls short of debunking the myth, preferring instead to offer theoretical options for the skeptical. Speaking of skeptics, some have suggested that what people assume is a vast and roiling lake monster might just be a sturgeon. After all, white sturgeon are native to the river that feeds Okanagan Lake. Sturgeon, which can live for a very long time and get to be as much as 20 feet long, are bottom feeders. They don't come to the surface and would present an unusual sight if they did. It's a reasonable theory, or it would be if dams along the river didn't keep sturgeon from migrating from the river to the lake. So, alas, it is just a theory, and not a very likely one. Alongside that theory, skeptics might like author and researcher Ben Radford's idea that the Ogopogo sightings might actually be sightings of waterspouts. Waterspouts are apparently common on Okanagan Lake. Radford posits that this is likely where the First Nation myths about Nyataka came from in the first place. But while I appreciate a rational point of view, I think Radford is reaching with this one. There are a few accounts from the past where Ogopogo witnesses mention swirling waters or eddies, most notably this one by the Walkland family from July 24, 1981. Quote, "We were in a rented ski boat and were running on the west side of the lake in the vicinity of Peachland, just a bit northwest of the tip of Rattlesnake Island. A water skier had just passed us going fast in the opposite direction to us when suddenly a creature surfaced directly in front of us facing a northeasterly direction. We saw no head, just a body, my thoughts being that the head might be laying flat just below the surface. At first I thought it was the wake of the other boat, but then realized that the boat's wake was going the other direction. As we came closer, the creature broke into a fast-paced, undulating motion. I pointed our boat directly at it, but as we neared it, the creature dove, causing a large, frothy whirlpool. I turned the boat around and could see the creature 2 or 3 feet below the water. It moved at great speed, at least halfway across the lake, before it dove deeper and out of sight. The creature was at least 50 feet long and seemed to be either very dark green or black." End quote. But waterspouts? Stranger, have you seen a waterspout? They are like a small geyser of water into the sky, like someone left a hose on with its nozzle pointed upward. I don't think a single solitary account I read about Ogie from any period over 100 years mentions anything like a waterspout. The other day, I cleaned my bathroom and used a bleach product and totally forgot I was wearing a Quince t-shirt. It was black. Now it's black and white speckled. I probably forgot it was Quince because it was so soft and comfortable, and I'm not gonna lie, I did sleep in it the night before, that I thought it was one of my old nightshirts. So now I have a speckled shirt, but I also get to go to Quince and re-up on my black t-shirt supply. And fall is coming, so you know it's time to reassess my warm clothing options. Since I own a human body, sometimes it changes in size, so I think I'm gonna need a new cashmere sweater or two. Plus, not for nothing, my husband may have put my Quince cashmere sweater in the dryer. The cashmere might not be machine washable, but the silk is. Quince has all kinds of options in machine washable silk, so you look and feel great, and you don't have to fork over a ton of money for dry cleaning. Quince partners directly with factories to bring you incredible, affordable prices on luxury items. They even have luggage. But unlike fast fashion brands, Quince only partners with safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturers with premium fabrics and finishes. That means that unless you splash bleach on your favorite V-neck t-shirt or your husband puts your favorite gray cashmere cardigan in the dryer, you can replace them without going broke. Make switching seasons a breeze with Quince's high-quality closet essentials. Go to quince.com/strange for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/strange to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/strange. In the case of a phenomenon like Ogopogo, it is so hard to know the truth. In 100 years, there have been consistent sightings, sometimes by many people who all agree that they saw what they saw. But where is the proof? There have been the odd photos and videos since the time of Art Folden's. Many of these recordings are documented on ogopogoquest.com, like this one, quote, Dan Basaraba of Peachland saw the strange phenomenon twice and took photos both times. The first was on July 19, 2001, and exactly 1 year later to the day, he was able to take a second image as well, end quote. But honestly, most of the footage looks like a sort of wave or ripple on top of the water, or a vague dark mass that could be anything. There are a few photos of some odd shapes emerging from the water, but they are far from conclusive. And then there's the one of a shape just beneath the surface of the water taken on September 7, 2006 by Michelle and Giles Bellevue from West Bank. The picture of what appears to be a sort of flippered being was taken south of the Kelowna Mission area on the east side of Okanagan Lake from their boat at about 2:30 p.m. The couple estimated the mass they photographed was about 25 feet long and around 50 feet from the boat. But while the photo is one of the clearer ones, it still could be anything. It's kind of like when you look at clouds and they look like a dragon, or a choo-choo train, or Homer Simpson. Videos of Ogopogo sightings are not much better. They mostly capture some movement in the water which, while perhaps unusual, is far from evidence of a prehistoric aquatic missing link thingy. And as sightings of Ogopogo move into the modern age, it becomes harder and harder to trust the photographic and videotaped documentation of these sightings. We live in an age of deepfakes and AI where very convincing videos of political figures stuttering and saying wild things are circulating on Facebook. I got an ad where a very real-looking and sounding Selena Gomez told me to enter a scammy contest where I could win fancy cookware. With that in mind, I'm surprised the footage of Ogie isn't more convincing. But maybe the lo-fi, crappy quality of the images actually are evidence that what they are picking up is real and just really hard to document. Or maybe that is what they want you to think. If only someone could gather some real evidence of Ogie's existence. But wait, someone did! According to cryptids.fandom.com's page on Ogopogo, in 2009, the remains of a mysterious creature was found on Lake Okanagan's shore. Dan Popoff from Kelowna discovered the creature while he was kayaking on the lake. He obviously took the thing home and put the remains in his freezer. You know, like you do. I guess this was in no way creepy at all. He was just waiting for DNA testing to be arranged. It does make me wonder how big the thing was. Like, are we talking takeout container sized or my aunt's deceased cat size? Inquiring minds. Cryptids.fandom says, quote, British Columbia's Daily Courier is reporting 2 scientists have agreed to analyze the remains of a mysterious-looking specimen found along the shore of Okanagan Lake. A tissue sample of the creature will be sent to a researcher in Ontario for DNA testing, and the carcass itself will be examined by a scientist in Alberta. The remains were found 2 weeks ago by Kelowna resident Dan Popoff as he paddled his kayak near the far end of Lakeshore Road. For now, he's still got the carcass, which measures more than 1 meter long, in his freezer at home. End quote. Okay, that's pretty big. He must have a giant freezer. Not creepy at all. Just kidding, Dan. It's cool. I know a lot of people who got giant freezers during COVID for storing all their booze and casseroles, and definitely not cryptid carcasses. Apparently, Popoff, for some reason, contacted a local woman named Arlene Gall, who had written extensively about encounters with Ogopogo. Gall agreed to, quote, send the tissue sample and carcass to 2 researchers who she declines to identify. If I name them, people will be calling them left and right, and they won't be able to get on with the business of determining just what this creature is, Gall said, end quote. Wow. So, stranger, do you want to hear the results of the DNA testing? Yeah, so do I. My researcher couldn't find anything more about the supposed analysis of the supposed carcass by any supposed scientists. Nothing. Nada. Zip. That's it. That's what we have. I suppose they could do what scientists did at Loch Ness and run a DNA test of the water to see if there's some unidentified or ancient DNA in it. Until someone can prove something more substantial than this kind of general eyewitness account, Ogopogo must remain a creature of myth, rather than one of science. And maybe that is fitting. If Ogopogo/Nyataka is a spiritual being entwined with the land and water, isn't it appropriate then that it should remain elusive and continue to defy the explanations of humans? Maybe Ogopogo's legacy is not to allow humans to legitimize their belief in it, or to demystify the mystical. In an interview for a YouTube series called Vancouver is Awesome, Jordan Coble, curator and heritage researcher and member of the West Bank First Nation, says he's not interested in proof of Hijacked. The anglicized story of a fearsome demon beast is a complete misinterpretation of what is essentially a metaphor for a relationship between humans and nature. When humans revere, care for, and respect the spirit of the lake, they are caring for the water itself. In this modern industrial/technological age, we have become so far removed from nature. We have forgotten that we come from water, that water is essential for life. It behooves us to treat it with reverence and respect. So after all, maybe it's not as mysterious as legend makes it out to be. Next time on Strange and Unexplained. In May of 1957, a mysterious stranger arrived in Omaha, Nebraska and shook things up with his eccentric ways. But when family from his life before 1957 showed up claiming he was someone else, he seemed to genuinely have no idea what they were talking about. The mystery of Larry Bader and Fritz Johnson. Strange and Unexplained is a production of Three Goose Entertainment with help from Grab Bag Collab. This episode was written by Eve Kerrigan and me, Daisy Egan, with research by the Strange Research Squad. Editing help from Amber Hunt, and sound engineering and mixing by Henry Lavoie. If you have an idea for an episode, head to our website, strangeandunexplainedpod.com, and fill out the contact form. I will write back. For more amazing content, join us at patreon.com/grabbagcollab, where for just $5 a month you get all the Grab Bag exclusive shows, and for $8 you get those, plus Amber Hunt's Crimes of the Centuries and Strange and Unexplained early and ad-free. Grab Bag is an all-female and non-binary owned profit share network where our contributors get to keep ownership of their shows. We strive to give a platform to those who might not be able to land themselves on a bigger network. Who knows, maybe you have a podcast idea you'd like to pitch to Grab Bag. We've got live recordings, watch parties, book clubs, and more. Why, there's so much going on over at Grab Bag, you'd wonder if we missed the memo on how capitalism works. Join me on Instagram at SNUPod, Daisy Egan, and Grab Bag Collab, or head to the Facebook page to join in the conversation. If you like the show, please visit a sponsor with our unique code, give us a quick review and 5 stars, subscribe, and download, and tell a friend. If you don't like the show, you can keep your opinion to yourself. It's free! Stay strange.